Welcome. Hey, I'll start over. Welcome, everybody, to Twins Talk Tech. I'm Bryce. That's Brent. And today we're going to talk about maps. Obviously, being a tech video podcast thing, digital maps. Brent was having some complaints. Shock, I know. Brent complained about anything, but he was having some complaints about, I believe, Apple Maps specifically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Apple
correct.
Maps. I'm sure there's things we can complain about all versions of maps, even paper maps for that matter. But Brent's going to rant a little bit about some complaints, some things that he's noticed recently that apparently he thinks should be fixed. Or is it things that they should be fixed, or why were they a problem in the first place? Is that what's really if you boil it down?
Both of those, because if it's a problem, it needs to be fixed, and it should not ever have been a problem. So to start out with, you mentioned maps. I believe you said Apple Maps. My navigation app of choice is Apple Maps. I like it better than the Google Map option. I like it better than, and I haven't used it in a long time. I used to have the TomTom app on the phone, which is basically the same thing as if you could buy the TomTom. And actually, I like that well enough. And back then, I liked it more than Apple Maps for the short time that they overlapped each other. At this point, the one that I bought so long ago, they don't update, and I can't even get it on my phone. The TomTom version, that is.
Doesn't Apple Maps use the TomTom data?
They use the TomTom data, but that's not necessarily what my complaint is.
Okay.
Because they also structure it differently. It looks a little different than the TomTom side of things. But the TomTom app, it would be very similar to buying it as a standalone product. You had the entire, whatever that mapping system was, it downloaded that entire mapping system. So you always had the United States. And if you're going to Canada, you buy Canada. And I think they broke it up maybe into various the sections of Canada and Mexico, wherever. But anyway, it downloaded all that, gigabytes, 1, 2, whatever the size was. And that's where my complaint is. So a few weeks ago, we went camping in Tennessee. And we went to a spot where about an hour before you got there, cell signal was spotty. And by spotty, I mean you had a bar for just a little bit, 5 minutes, and then no service. It said no service on the phone. The majority of that last hour. And then when you're there, just no service, period. There was one little spot. It was weird. There was one little opening as you get over kind of on the highway where you have you go through highways where they've chiseled out through a hill, and there's a lot of rock on this side, rock on that side. There's one part where it opened up on this side, the direction we were going. And right there, you could get 2 to 3 bars and pretty fast speeds, LTE. But just that side of it, just this side of it. And I'm talking maybe 50 yards of a spot. So, I went there and I pulled over and I downloaded on Google Maps the map of the area. Because if you don't have it downloaded, both with Apple Maps as well as Google Maps, it's going to stream those maps. Now, it's going to stream the chunk a little bit ahead of you, effectively like buffering video, so to speak. But my complaint is, I can understand not wanting to download the entire United States if most people aren't traveling the entire United States. But wouldn't it make sense? Wouldn't it be handy if I said, get me from point A to point B, if it would download, when I have good signal, every one of the little bits of that map that I might need? Whether it does the POI, points of interest, I don't care. I've never used any of that. Well, I don't think of it. Maybe I haven't. I don't recall doing it. But to have the map when you're using a mapping system is awful handy. And for a good little part of that, all I saw was a blank screen with that little triangle that was me doing this. And I could see the grid, because the grid would show up, and the grid would kind of do this as I was going down a hill or on a. So it knew where I was it had spatial awareness, but it didn't have the data to tell me that's where my turn is. so that I could see it coming up. Because it was trying to go ahead, sir.
Well, okay. First of all, it's
You didn't do this, so I didn't notice that.
Extremely valid. I concur with your findings. I have experienced the same thing, and I probably have 3 or 4 different mapping programs, more specifically GPS apps with the ability to download maps for that purpose. If I know I'm going somewhere where there may or may not be service, then I'll go and I'll just download. In this case, I think they do it Southern California, Northern California, depending on the state. Sometimes it's the whole state if it's small enough. And I asked this while I'm about to look, does it even have the option to download, to pre-download? Because I know Google you can, and then it stays downloaded for 30 days or something like that. Can you even do that with Apple Maps?
You cannot, at least as far as I checked, because I did look through the application and I saw no options for it to download, even just your path. So from, again, point A to point B, even that, I did not see the option in there. So out of the 30 people that watch this, if you guys have had any use of these applications and you know that Apple Maps can, then mention it in the comments. Let us know. But I've not seen any indication from my digging through all of the applications. I've done a little bit of looking online, and I didn't see any indication there either. As you mentioned, Google Maps does. And what I did was I drove, which is about 15 minutes from where we were camping, to that little spot, that little 50 yards of internet LTE heaven, and downloaded the maps all the way from there to here. This area here I have as a downloaded map section in my Google Maps. I do have that loaded as well, but I was just using Apple Maps. And had I thought about it, I would have thought about that. I say that I didn't think about it, so maybe I wouldn't. But I did, however, think beforehand, I need to make sure I get that downloaded. So that at one point beforehand, that morning was kind of rushed, as it tends to happen when you're heading out of town. But so that's my biggest complaint. So for what you said before, has it always been a problem? Yes, it's always been an issue with Apple Maps. Back in the day when it was when they first released it, or even when Google Maps first came out, and it streamed. At that point, there wasn't a way to download it, and you were using 2G in our area. Other areas had faster internet, but was still super slow here. It was not fast enough to download the maps by the time you got to the next part where it needed that next map. But nowadays, with the speeds, I guess they just assume that you'll have fast enough speeds. And it's also Apple. It could just be that, so long as 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10 people on your given day are happy, then we're going to get to that extent. That's another complaint about mine with Apple, but that's a different topic. But it seems to bleed over to this. So that's the issue that I have. I used a little bit Gaia Maps, but Gaia Maps doesn't get you from point A to point B. It doesn't navigate you. It's just a nice mapping system so you can see. It will track you, but I haven't done any navigation in it. If it's got the ability, I'm not aware of it. But again, I downloaded the maps from Google Maps, was able to navigate just fine once that was downloaded.
Okay, you're breaking up enough, so I can't tell when you're done.
No, sir.
So, if you're having this problem regularly-ish, then why not just switch to Waze or Google Maps or, one of the other myriad of apps that are out there?
Well, Waze, I don't believe you download in Waze either. Do you download in Waze? Does it use the mapping system that's downloaded in Google Maps? I know it's owned by Google, but I don't think it uses the same mapping system.
It's a valid question. I just kind of assumed it did, but I don't know. But you also have to have some sort of an account. You used to be able to use Waze without an account. Now you have to use an account. That's what I'm told, at least. I haven't downloaded Waze in a while. So there's other frustrations with it, but you get some other benefits. A car accident ahead, here's the problem with the time next to it. Because I know on Apple Maps, maybe Google as well, you get the lines that show green and then they turn to yellow and then red and then yellow again and green. But But those could be 2, 3, 4, 5 hours old. They might not be there by the time you get there, or you're stuck in traffic for 30 minutes and all of a sudden they appear because that's how delayed the system is. Whereas, Waze is much faster. Again, I don't really know if they have the offline maps like you're talking about, but
yeah, I don't believe they do. I do have it downloaded. I didn't use it. And it's not the issue because of where I live does have fast enough internet that in general, I don't run into the problem. It was only, again, once I got to that point, and I did have a very similar issue because we did some other activities, not at the same area that we camped, but we drove through, the area we drove through to get there, that area also had very bad signal, especially for AT&T. Kind of, I'm trying to think of the name of the cell service in that area, Central Kentucky. I can't think of the name of it. I used to know. Either way, a lot of Verizon, and then for the GSM, another group, very small, basically I think just Central Kentucky, but I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they're not sharing with AT&T, so you get real bad AT&T coverage over there in that area. So I did experience it there. That was a couple of years ago. Generally speaking, where I'm at now, I have the maps. And like I said, normally I think about it because I know that Apple doesn't have it. But my big complaint is, why on earth do they not have it? I mean, they're calling their versions of Mac OS by Yosemite, by what was some of the other ones. So they know that these remote places exist that don't have great cell phone service. So you would think that they would have enough sense to know if you can't download it while you're there or getting there, maybe we ought to cache it. And again, I'm not saying give the option to download the way the Google does. But if I'm going from point A to point B, download those maps while I have the service. It's just nonsense to me. It doesn't, I guess I maybe should file a radar. Certainly I'm not the only one. There's no way I'm the only one that has this complaint that's run into this, especially people that live down there, for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I was going to mention is you do have the opportunity to go to Apple's website and file what they call a radar, which is feature request, basically. That way you can, have your voice heard, as they say. How often Apple looks at that and then goes, that guy's right, versus, he's not. What he's thinking isn't on our roadmap, so no thank you. I don't know. But, I guess to some degree, at least it makes people feel better. Well, I told them, here's what they need to do. But I do agree. I think that would be a nice, convenient thing for us as customers, but also a wise thing because for safety, what if you do run into that? What if sure, there's in theory good enough cell service all the way, but maybe a cell tower is down for whatever reason. You do still have the satellite. So if you have the data cached, the maps themselves, then you can use the satellite to go all the way through. So that's interesting. It is interesting that they don't do that. But
one thing I noticed was that they do have the data, but they don't have all of the maps. I'll give you an example. As where I first noticed that things were going a little weird using Apple Maps was about 1.5 miles from the turn. And so I kind of glanced over, and we have CarPlay in the Jeep. So I glanced over instead of having to see the smaller screen on the phone. I saw the 1.5 miles or whatever, but everything was gridded out, and I was like, "Oh, great!" I couldn't see the road. I saw the triangle. However, when I got to, was it a 1/4 mile away, where they prompt you and say, or maybe even 1/2 mile and then 1/4 mile. I don't remember the 1/2 mile, but I do recall the closer one because I was like, "All right, I don't see anything. We're going to get anything here." It did say, in 1/2 mile, turn right on such and such or something or other. So the data was there, the information. I don't know how far out. My guess is, you can scroll it if you look through the, what's the term? It's not details, but itinerary or whatever it is. You can see all of the various turns. So that information is there. It's just reading that back to you, I guess. But you would think that it would attach to that images of the maps as you rolled through. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's probably what they're doing. They're downloading kind of the list, the directions list, when to turn here, when to turn there, and they're based off of probably, in the background, GPS coordinates, where for us, they're just names of things because that's what we remember. And so when you do lose the map itself, you still have the GPS coordinate, and that's maybe why it still works. It would still be nice, though, if you could visually see it, because some people do go by the visuals instead of by the voice. I try to use it as just more of a suggestion, just because it is wrong so often, at least out here where there's still a lot of construction going on. And so if it's not updated as regularly as I would like, then there's a problem there. But It is, by the way, interestingly enough, how quick things are updated, but not necessarily updated correctly. So part of our journey with our new house was it was just what they called bare land, bare property. So although it was off of a street, there was no address. So we had to go down and register with the county/post office a new address. And they already have some sort of algorithm that says, here's what the numbers are before, here's what the numbers are after. Okay, here's your address. And so they gave us an address. And of course, I looked it up immediately, didn't show up anywhere. But it was within a matter of a week or so. I looked it up on Google, Apple, Bing, or whatever they use, which I don't remember. Maybe it's hearkening back to the, what was that, Quest? What was the Quest called? MapQuest data.
Yeah. I think there's a TomTom as well. I think Apple.
It might be. It might be. But so when I would type it in, it would show up within just a week or so. But only one of them, I don't remember which one, I think it was actually Microsoft's, was accurate. Further down the street is where Apple put us. And then Google put us like up on a plateau behind our house where we couldn't even ever get to with a car, at least not currently. So it was funny. And slowly everything kind of merged, and now the address is correct on all the maps. But I did think that was kind of interesting, that there must be polling from these government databases on a fairly regular basis. Not regular enough to be like daily, because that's probably a lot of data, right? But, once a week, once a month, whatever it may be on their side. And then slowly it gets.
I turned in a report for this address because we have if you head that direction, a curve, and they have this house at the address on the other side of that curve. It's not a super long distance, not like it's quarter mile, but it's not like they got us next door or too far. It's basically down around that curve. And so if you're looking for the house, there's only one other place over there. And so everybody might go to the wrong spot, but we always tell them visually the house looks different. So we give them a visual, go around the curve, go there. But yeah, I went to Google a long time ago, google.com, the maps, and said, this is where it is, but they've never updated it. So I don't know if it needs multiple people to go in there and say that or what it is, but it's still in the wrong location.
They're probably waiting for the next time that they go back and do their drive-by.
We don't have Google. It's no Street View out here. That's where we are.
That might be why they never update. But anyways, Well, it's a valid complaint. I do concur with all of your findings and your issues. I sympathize. There's been plenty of times where I plan on doing it. I usually wait until I get there to download the maps because I forgot all the time. But
right.
It definitely is more convenient to have those where the maps are there, even if they expire like Google's does. So I would recommend putting in that request on Apple's side and see where it goes. You never know. That could be one huge thing they announce this coming year. Thanks to username, whatever yours is. Here's what we're going to do from now on. Thank you, sir. And then Tim Cook winks from the stage. Not like a gay wink, but just hey, good job.
They don't
type of wink.
Yeah, we might want to edit that out since he's coming.
Not going to do that. Not going to edit it. I don't care.
No, it's okay.
I don't care.
We're all white men. Not allowed to say that.
All right. Well, that's good for now. I did get, and I was going to bring it and show the box, but I forgot. That's at my desk. I did purchase, partially through your suggestion, but also for a need at the house, a boroscope. So it's one of those cameras you can put in small areas and see around. This one has a nice distance that it can see. I haven't used it in the wall yet. I'll be doing that probably tomorrow so that I can fish a new line through to run some power. But it was nice to inexpensive. And and the quality is good enough. But I'll definitely show it off maybe next time about what it can do. Anything else before we head out?
No, nothing for me right now anyway.
Okay, up to 29 or 30 subscribers, which is crazy, especially in the fact that the past couple of weeks we haven't had any new videos.
We need to do one a month, and maybe those numbers will go through the roof.
For other channels, they need to do one a day. For us, we need to back it off a bit. I think
that's right. I'll subscribe if you guys record less. That's
yeah. It
less of you, and you can have.
But the numbers of watches hasn't gone up, which I think is interesting. But like you said, we don't know because you go in one time it'll say 4, and you go in another time it'll say 3. So what do they equal a watch? So maybe we're actually getting a lot of watches, and Google's like, no soup for you.
Yeah. Google's keeping us down. Google is the man.
Google is the man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for enjoying, because we know you did. And we look forward to recording this again, and then editing it, and then posting it, so that you can enjoy yet another episode of Twins Talk Tech. See you next time.
Yeah, bye.